Hey guys, so I'm going to chat with you a little bit first, just a moment, because we're going to have Kate join me. Today we're going to talk about how much you can expect to make in your first year, what's actually plausible. Hey Kate.
Hello, hello.
Hello. So today we are talking about what is plausible to expect to earn in your first year. So obviously what we're going to give them is an exact number that for every single person, right?
That's what I wish we could do. I absolutely,
Yeah.
what we all want. Everyone's favorite thing, money, pricing. Ugh, I hate it as much as the next person. But no, we're not going to give you that. But the reason this came up, someone I think asked on our YouTube, I want to say, asked if it was possible to earn $30,000 in your first year. And so, of course, is it possible? Heck yeah, it's possible to earn a heck of a lot more than that. But it's also possible that your situation might not give you enough time to even hit 30,000. So there's a lot of factors that go into what's possible in your first year, right?
Exactly. I mean, even just are you doing this part-time? Are you doing this as a side hustle, or are you doing this full-time? That, like, the very, very place to start out with is clearly that's going to make a big difference in terms of what you're able to earn. If you have a lot of time to devote to it, to learn and to practice and then to start pitching clients, then yeah, you're going to make a lot more money than if you have less time. But that's okay, because not everybody's goal is to make, 90, 100, $110,000 a year. Some people want a side hustle because they want to make an extra $1 or $2 a month to set aside or pay bills or, pay for Disney World or what have you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that a lot of students in the CCA in particular are working full-time jobs while they ramp up this, whether as a side hustle, as you mentioned, or with the goal of transitioning to it full-time. And inevitably, I know I talked about this in my podcast episode about my story, but I was trying to do the same thing where I was working a full-time job as a copywriter at the time, but needed to go full-time freelance. And so you hit a certain point where there just aren't enough hours in the day where I felt like I kind of capped out of what I was able to do with my freelance work. And there was no other way until I left that full-time job to make more forward momentum, make more progress. So that is obviously, the time is such a huge factor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And time that you have to devote to it, but also time that you spend on various portions. We talk a lot about there's a lot to learn. It's a new career. So there is a lot of training to go through and a lot of practice to get to the point where you are adept enough that you are ready to take on clients, which does not have to be a long time, but there is still that ramp up time. And some people like to charge in and like to do a lot of stuff right away and then still have to practice, but do a lot of practice. And some people like to approach it a little slower, a little bit more methodically, and really kind of take their time as they go through. And that's going to affect how much they earn on that. If you're saying first year is from the moment that you start learning about copywriting through 12 months later, then, which is another factor as well. How do we define first year? If first year is the moment you start learning copywriting to 12 months from that, the time that you spend learning is going to affect, and the time that you spend learning and practicing and waiting to start taking clients, that's going to affect how much you learn in your first, how much you earn in your first year as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And to give a little preview, we're going to break down my numbers on a podcast episode because I think it's sometimes helpful to see, kind of pull back the curtain. Again, one person, one scenario, it's going to be different. Everyone's going to have very, very different numbers year to year to year to year. But so we're going to break down my first year full-time freelance, and then five years later, I think, whatever it is, kind of showing that progression. But for my first year, so I looked up these numbers. So I have the number for my first year full-time freelance. This goes in with a lot of caveats, and we'll get to them more in the podcast too, in that I was probably working 1/3 time, as I call it, not even part-time, because I didn't have a system. And that's the biggest thing I want to emphasize. I went into it and I did not have a system for freelance. I knew how to do copywriting, and I had a lot, I didn't have to ramp up with learning how to become a copywriter, but I did not have a system for freelance, and that showed. So by the end of my first year, I had hit my first 5-figure month. I want to say October or November of that first year, I had hit 10 or 11 grand in a month, which was huge. And that momentum carried me through. You know, I kind of was able to keep ramping that up from there. Until that point, it was a little, you know, again, working 1/3 time. So my first year, I earned just under 54,000 working 1/3 time, which it's a good, like, it's nothing to balk at. I was quite happy,
Yeah.
especially with the amount of time I was putting in. I had plenty of free time, which was amazing. And so getting that system, it's I'm telling you.
Of course, the scheduling, the pitching, the doing it regularly, wishing and hoping is not a strategy. Relying on referrals is not a strategy. And Kate and I will be the first people to tell you, she's telling you she's done it, and I've made the same mistake. I say, okay, students, this is what you have to do. But a couple years ago, I did the same thing. I was like, oh, I've got so many referrals coming in, I don't have to worry about pitching. No,
you do.
And then it'll work out. Yeah.
And the podcast episode, definitely look out for that, because my number in 2020 was quite different than that first year. But so that was my first year. Again, very different. I didn't have to learn copywriting from scratch when I went freelance. I had a full-time copywriting job. It was a pay cut. Again, I wanted to go freelance at some point, and I had ramped up all I could. And so I did ramp it up more. And you see that snowballing toward the end of my first year when I kind of put in the time, because there's a lot of students know that find success. It's just when you're at the top of, you're pushing that boulder up the mountain, keep going, because once it falls on the other side, then that does, you're golden. But I think it's too often we want to give up right at that moment, because it is the hardest. You are at the peak. You are so tired. You're so exhausted. You've put in so much effort, and you haven't seen the payoff yet. But so,
yeah, but you will stick with it. I think that's a really great point. I think that one of the most, whether it's entrepreneurial ventures, whether it is freelance, whether it's whatever you want to call it, I think that one of the most underrated and most effective tools for success is just sticking with it. So many people are looking for like the new strategy, or okay, well, I see all the systems you give us in the CCA, but like, I've also been investigating this, and I've also been investigating this. Okay, but have you been putting the systems that we gave you into action? Have you been taking action on that? And have you been doing that consistently? Because when you do, at a certain point, you will hit that tipping point. If you are sending out the pitches and you're following up, there's another thing too, is we have so many students who are like, oh, I sent out the pitches. Okay, great. And are you sending out your follow-ups? No. Okay, so you still have to follow up with people, because most people you're not going to hear from them on the first email, because people are busy. And it's really, not to get too off topic of what you can learn in a year, but what you can earn in a year. But the taking action on these systems, and doing it until you hit that tipping point, because it will come. If you keep doing it, that tipping point will come, and all of a sudden you'll look back and be like, whoa, I'm so busy. We have so many students in the group, right, who are like, I can't believe how busy I am. I didn't realize it was going to happen.
Because you're putting so many pitches out in the world. And I think it's a mindset shift of like, oh, I sent, 5, 10, 20, however many pitches, and no one's responded. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean flipping that to say, hey, I've put 20 things out into the world, and that good stuff might come back in the future. Maybe it won't, but I guarantee there are so many times when the timing's not right for your client too. So, we talk about time and how much time you have, but it's also the timing of when you start to pitch and when these clients receive your pitches. It might not be an immediate payoff. So you're laying the foundation. And I love what James said. It's about being realistic about your situation and what you can do without burning out. And that's so true. So, and it's setting your goal, because to your point earlier, Nikki, I want to echo it. It's not all about the dollar amount. My first year, I was thrilled with the dollar amount I had. And did I want more work? Yes, because I wanted to work full-time hours. That was my goal. But if that's not your goal, then great. Then you set your other goals and set yourself up to meet those, and not all of these other numbers are an interesting, fun thing. People like to talk about them, but what's your number? What works for you and your lifestyle and what you want and your other goals in life that, aren't financial related? So
yeah, exactly. If there's that, I think your and or your goals can be monetary, whatever, but what are your goals? What do you want to make in your first year that will make you feel successful and or will make you feel comfortable? If you're like, I need to cover these expenses plus this additional percentage or whatever, understand what you really need to hit. It's very easy to be like, oh, I want to hit 6 figures, and you absolutely can't. But if it's 6 figures just for the sake of 6 figures, then it's kind of a shallow, not a shallow goal, because it's certainly, if that's your goal, go for it. But you may find that it has more meaning if there's additional things attached to it than just hitting, that's just a number. If 6 figures is the number, but it also means that you cover your expenses, you cover this, and you put away, 10 grand for your kids' college that year, then think of how much more exciting and fulfilling that 6 figures really is. Make your goal what you want it to be, and to get back to what can you earn in your first year, you can earn a ton. What it comes down to is, what do you want to earn, and are you willing to take the action to get there? Are you willing to get out of your comfort zone? Are you willing to send out pitches on days when you don't feel like sending out pitches? And we all know that your first pitches are so hard and they take so long, but the more you do them, the faster they get and the easier it gets to send them out. If you're willing to do that work and get out of your comfort zone and say, okay, I don't feel like doing this today, but I'm going to do it anyway because I'm a business owner, then there's no reason you can't hit your goals, whatever they are. Well, maybe not if your goals are 8 figures in a year. That might be a little
for my full-time people, I feel you when you're building up the business in addition to your full-time job. I think for a lot of us, for me, it was replacing that full-time income. I didn't do that the first year. I took a significant pay cut. But again, it was because I didn't have the right systems in place. I was relying on word of mouth. And I mean, it did super well with word of mouth. So a reminder, put it out into the world, because otherwise people won't know. And that, it got me to almost 54,000 in the first year just from that. No pitching, literally. This girl sent no pitches.
You did have a network. You weren't brand new to copywriting.
I did have a network.
But still.
Mm-hmm. Again, watch out for that podcast episode, because when this girl put systems into place, the number is completely different than the first.
Yeah, it definitely, if you guys aren't subscribe now, because when she told me the number, I was like,
I was shocked, actually. And I had just done my taxes and I was like, wait, was this right? And no wonder why I paid so much in taxes.
Yeah, but so definitely keep an eye out for that episode, because I think there's also some money mindset stuff to unpack.
Oh, so much.
I find especially fascinating.
Yeah, if you are uncomfortable, this is uncomfortable just having said that number. So
yeah, a little uncomfortable. Yeah, she hasn't told you what the number is yet, but it's such a high number that it's all kinds of exciting money mindset. All right, not to get too far off, but so what can you earn in your first year? Kind of in a nutshell, whatever your goal is, you can likely hit that. However, you have to be willing to put in the time, put in the work, get out of your comfort zone, do the things that scare you, tell people that you are a copywriter. But
we were talking another podcast episode, plugging a lot of podcasts, but we had a great guest, Grace, who's wonderful, but talking about hit that first 1,000 month. And then 2, and then, break it down. None of us went from 0 to 6 figures overnight at all. So throwing that out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So we hope that was helpful. We hope that gave you a little bit of inspiration, maybe even a little gentle kick in the pants to take action you didn't really want to take. In fact, here's a little challenge. If you have something on your to-do list today that you should do first, but you've been pushing it off. Our challenge to you is to take that action right now. Hop off of the podcast or hop off of the of the live here and take that action. The name of the podcast is the Build Your Copywriting Business Podcast. Quick, simple, easy. Search Build Your Copywriting Business Podcast on Apple, on Spotify, on all of them. So we've got some good stuff and some good stuff coming.
And if you, for whatever reason, you can always go to filthyricwriter.com/podcast. We have a track player there. If that's easier for you than downloading any of the podcast apps, or, you know, depending on what your phone situation is. So it's always on the web.
Awesome. All right. So Kate, thanks for hopping on and joining me. Bye, everybody.